Thanks for coming, Craig.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, Craig Breinholt, the owner and founder of Breinholt Insurance Group. At the beginning, I liked you had it. It was called Big for a little while. I don't see as much big around for Breinholt Insurance Group and the elephant logo.
Because we're small. We don't like to emphasize big and, false advertising.
I don't know. I wouldn't call you small. I wouldn't call what you've built small, but it's been great. And I would hope that people that are listening would be able to hear how you've built what you've built and explore it as an option as far as what's possible from, I obviously, Craig's like a brother to me, and so I know a lot of your story, but I would hope that people could get some tangibles on if I want to go into a commission-based organization, what it takes to build something that lasts and build something that they can count on and be proud of and all of the above. But before we do that, so anyone that's listening could find a way to relate to you. Can you take us back to, was insurance always the goal? Like, was insurance the plan? Growing up, were you 14 years old and wanted to go into insurance?
Definitely not. And again, I will relate a lot of my life to the examples that I've had in my life, right? I think a lot of us grow up and we use what we see as a narrative for what we want, maybe, right? And we see, someone makes, I think if you watch any of the, Instagram videos of people pulling up in a Ferrari or this or that, a lot of people go, what do you do for a living, right? Why do they ask that? Why do they ask, what do you do for a living? Because they're interested in knowing, how did you make enough money to buy a Ferrari? That's the baseline, I think, of why people ask those questions. What do you do for work, right? What do? You see someone that's successful, you want to know what they do.
Yeah.
And I've always been of the belief that it doesn't matter if you sell toilet paper or porta potties or real estate or insurance or cameras or office furniture. You can make a crap ton of money doing anything. It's not necessarily about the product itself always, as much as it is there a market for it? Is there opportunity? And are you a hard enough worker to be successful in what you're doing? And have you identified your audience enough to know that there's going to be enough people that are willing to buy from you? And are you willing to work hard enough to be successful at it?
I mean, that was really the inspiration behind the podcast. We believe that there's a million ways to make $1 million. Yeah. We're more focused on who you're being in whatever field you choose that allows you to have that success. And you use the example of toilet paper.
Yeah.
That's literally one of the examples of what brought all of this to life.
Yeah.
Is I took a girl out in high school and she drove a nice car and had a nice house. And long story short, I found out that her dad sold toilet paper.
Really?
And I was just like, wait, what? And you got all this from selling toilet paper, and that was a part of the story. So
and it's really cool, even in what I do, because I do commercial insurance and I'm a commercial broker for businesses on getting the best, options for their business insurance. And seeing what they do, I'm blown away sometimes by some of these clients that are making great money doing things like toilet paper or porta potty rentals or a lot of different things. And I'm like, what? Why didn't I think of that? But to each their own. And I'm happy to see successful people be successful in a lot of different areas. And it's cool to see, for sure.
What kind of student were you growing up?
I tried hard. I really did. I tried hard. I wasn't like the one that went home and studied all night long. I feel like I never had a tough time in school, so to speak. I never had to study much. And I was, for the most part, an A student, maybe a couple Bs, but wasn't interested in the honors classes. I was into the social more than I was the school, but I always made sure the school was good, because I knew that my parents were pretty strict growing up. They expected, A's, and they wanted straight A's. And I knew that in order to go to college, if I wanted to do that and they wanted me to do that, I mean, I was a good boy. I was a good LDS boy growing up, and I wanted to have good grades. And my sister was the overachiever with the 4.4 GPA. I was 3.75 to 3.8 something, 3.9. So I was great. I was mostly a straight A student, but school wasn't difficult. It was mostly, math and science came really easy to me, and my brain just understands numbers and concepts like that pretty easily. And so for me, it was enjoyable to learn, but I loved the social aspect, and played soccer, played the drums, played the piano begrudgingly, but I ended up, quitting that in 12, 13, 14 years old, somewhere around there. I stopped playing piano, but I could still read music a little bit. But I loved the drums, didn't take that any further, but started running when I was a sophomore and kind of took that into the next level because I knew it's one thing to be in something like the drums. You love the drums. I enjoyed the drums. But if you think long term, which I always try to think long term in anything, like where is this going to go? Probably not going to be in Travis Barker anytime soon. I'm probably not going to be playing with any major bands anytime soon. So it was a hobby, and it was fun. I did it on the side. But then I started running, and running came easy. It seemed I didn't have to try that hard to beat most of the people, which I'm not trying to be mean. It just was a natural thing that I felt I was good at. Coach Monty from Highland, who's still coaching there, go Hawks, he was like, you need to quit this soccer crap. You're way better at running. I'm like, yeah, but I like soccer. I love playing with Jesse Knight and some of my buddies at Highland, and I started playing on varsity a little bit. And he's like, yeah, but you're getting hurt. You're getting injured. You're way better at running. You can beat all these kids. Like, you need to start running more. And you need to be a part of this program. So I just quit soccer pretty much, and I started running because it came more natural to me. And when you're winning, things are a little more fun. Running would not be my first choice. It was not fun necessarily, the training, the racing. When I'd be racing on the side of a canal, I'd think to myself many times, I wish someone would push me in that canal just so I could, have an excuse to fall over and quit this race. I wanted to die. But I could suffer, I could push myself, and I could usually win those races. So when I'm running, yeah, it hurts. And yeah, you might crap your pants. And yeah, you might lose control of your bowels or certain parts of your body because it's trying to supply blood to other muscles that need it while you're running to keep your feet moving. But I feel like I could do that. I think that's why I related with Coach Monty so well. He would talk about Steve Prefontaine, about the ability to, if I'm in the same condition as the person next to me running, it doesn't matter because I can suffer more than he can, is what Prefontaine used to say. And I could relate to that because I feel like, the Mike Smiths of the world that ran with me at Highland, he was very much in the same condition I was, but I felt like I could suffer more than he could, or suffer more than maybe the person next to me in the moment, and that gave me an edge. So I started running and ended up being, state champ in my senior year. And I could have taken it further, but I didn't. I wanted to go on the mission. I wanted to come back, and I wanted to build a career. I had seen my dad. The reason I was talking about examples is I saw my dad and what my dad had built and how my dad had worked and the life he was able to provide for us. And for me, I wanted that same thing. I wanted that.
Give me an idea. Like you're saying, I saw what my dad had built. I want that. What were some of the things that he provided?
Yeah, he provided the ability for us to have a cabin to go play at, for us to go on fun trips together, for us to have fun toys, right? The sand rail, the quads, the dirt bikes, the fun backyard, just the ability to, and my dad's a social person and so am I, and we like to entertain, we like to have people over, we like to have parties, we like to have things that we can, get together with people and have a great time, whether it's our family or whether it's others. And that was something I wanted and wanted the ability to do. And he was always about, money doesn't create happiness. It's not about the money. It's not about the things. But if we can enjoy those things together, then it brings us closer together. So it's worth it, right? Yeah. And that always stuck in my head. It was ingrained in my head that, we are very blessed. We've been blessed. Don't act spoiled or I'll take everything away from you, basically. And I've used that as a model in my own life, so to speak, to where I can talk to my kids and show my kids, hey, yeah, we've been blessed. I'm nothing, in my opinion, I don't think I'm anywhere near my dad's status in terms of what he's been able to build, but I think I've got a little bit of, of a runway underneath me, and I think that my kids are very blessed and they've been given everything they ever need. And so teaching your kids that you've been blessed and that you have things and not to take advantage of it and to be humble and just be good kids, that's important. And I loved those lessons my dad gave me. And so he taught us how to work. He took us to his buildings. I was very involved as a kid. I mean, I was overly involved in sports activities. And then on the weekends, he would take us to clean his buildings. So I didn't have a ton of free time until later in my high school years. I stopped doing some of those crazy activities and whatnot, and I had a little more time to socialize. But just the example of my dad, going to CPI, which was a 3 or 4 person employee business at the time. He outworked the other partners. The other partners asked him if they wanted to buy him out because he'd produced 10 times what they had. He took over the company. He grew it. And my dad was always the social, hardworking producer in that office to grow that business and always be the top producer at commercial properties to be an example to the others of how to sell, how to keep the book of business growing. and hire key people to run the business. And just looking at what he did, you know, I of course I would want that same thing. I would want something to, whether it was me working at another company and being the example of the biggest producer, the number one producer at that company, I didn't necessarily need to run my own company. That wasn't the most important thing to me. It was being somebody that was in a space or in a position with unlimited growth potential and seeing what he had done. So
what I heard in that is you wanted to be paid what you were worth.
Yeah, and I didn't want to be capped on what, if I'm able to produce and be a salesman, be a producer in a field that I was content with, that made me happy, that fulfilled others, fulfilled me, and you know, felt like was a worthwhile opportunity and a good thing. I didn't want to be capped. I didn't want someone to say, okay, well, you've hit your 20% bonus this year. Like, there's no more for you. You just coast from there because your income's capped. Like, that wouldn't work for me. I want the ability to grow with unlimited potential. And, you know, knowing what I know and seeing what I've seen, I know that my dad's been able to do that. And I know I would want to try to do that same thing. So after my mission, I came home and...
So time frame on there. So you're now 21 years old, and this is when you started this dissecting or reverse engineering what your dad had built and thinking like, okay, how can I go replicate a similar lifestyle?
Yeah, I'd seen it, and I knew I'd come off my mission, and I would... And my parents were big about getting my degree. So just as a checklist item, get that degree, have that degree. So I started getting my bachelor's degree. I flew through school as quick as I could. I just wanted it over. I just wanted to get that box checked to get that college degree, bachelor's degree. So I went to ASU.
You went to school because your parents requested that you did?
Yeah, and I generally think it was a good idea. They pushed it hard. They really wanted me to get my degree. So I was married 5 or 6 months, about 6 months after my mission, I was married. Met my wife, ex-wife now, within the first month of getting back, was engaged 3 months later, and was married within 5 months of meeting her. So it was quick, and it was a good time, but I wanted to do all those things to get school taken care of so that I could get into a career. And dating and all that stuff was a distraction too. So come home, find someone, get married, settle down, have no more distractions, and the dating life was a good thing. And so that's when I started having conversations with my dad about, what do you think I should do? And he gave his opinion, and he really said, you know, and I understand where he's coming from now, because looking back at what I've had to do, yeah, I would probably say the same thing to my kids. However, his was, look, I've busted my hump for, 20-something, 30, close to 30 years, and I don't know if I would go back and do it again the same way I have, because I gave up a lot of time with you guys as kids, and I gave up a lot of time with the family, and I got lucky in certain scenarios that led me into more business that maybe you wouldn't be able to get. And it's a one-time sale, the real estate is. They get leases and things that can seem like residual, but their deals are deal to deal to deal to deal, where he was like, find something where there's more of a residual aspect in it, where you can build.
He's into commercial brokerage.
He's a commercial realtor, correct.
Yeah.
So commercial real estate, and he's done very well, and he's got 70 brokers in that company now that also sell real estate, but he's always been the number one. He's always made most of his money off his book of business. Sure, he makes some off the company now, but it's always been him producing. He's never had a company to just sit back and go, oh, we've got income here, guys. Everyone's working and I'm making money. He's always been hustling for the majority of his income off of his production. And it's deal to deal to deal. And he suggested insurance. My Uncle Damon had been in the insurance business 5 or 6 years, I believe. And he said, go talk to Damon and see what that's all about. He said, I think that's a really good opportunity to build something, has more of a residual aspect to it, to where in 10, 15, 20 years, you could really be in a good spot and not have to worry about the next deal. Take care of your clients and keep them happy, and they stay with you. And so I went and talked to Damon, and he confirmed that was the model, so to speak, that you could retain most of your clients if you're doing the things you should and you have the right company to help support that business. And I liked that, and I decided to go jump in. So in early 2010, I jumped into Webb and Greer. I was finishing my last semester at ASU. So I had thrown in, 2008. So I started in 2008 and I was finishing in 2010. So yeah, I flew through my bachelor's degree, 21 credit hours in the summer, 21 credit hours a semester, I maxed out the summer and my parents didn't pay for my college. I didn't ask them to. I guess they would have probably helped if I needed it, but I got some grants because I was on the mission, and then I just paid for school. They did give us a little money when we got married and helped with a car, but then I was paying my way through college and working full time. I started working at University of Phoenix to get me through the year and a half or close to 2 years of college.
With the end in mind of getting into insurance, was the University of Phoenix and the bachelor degree like, hey, I'm going to do this regardless. I want to get it done as quick as possible so I can get into the insurance space? Or while you were finishing up the bachelor degree and working at the University of Phoenix? Because the University of Phoenix, I believe, had some upside from a W-2 standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you could have climbed that up pretty good.
Yeah.
You had some good connections there.
Yeah, University of Phoenix, I mean, there were so many people that were working there at one point, and it was like, you can get in if you do well. It's at the end of the day, it was sales.
Yeah.
You were enrolling people in school, but you were using Title IV funding to help them pay for college. Some got grants, some had to take loans. And at the end of the day, you were persuading them in a kind way to enroll in school because it's a good thing and they can get their degree and they can move on with their career. But it started to feel a little sleazy towards the end, where it was like, we're all about the students. However, if you don't get your enrollments, your job's on the line, right? Or it just didn't feel very good. And I kind of saw the writing on the wall. And luckily, it was towards the end of getting my degree. And I was trying to wrap up the University of Phoenix and decide where I wanted to go for a career.
Okay.
So I hadn't decided insurance until the end of, towards the end of my degree. I hadn't made a decision on what career path I wanted to go into. Insurance was never this thing that I thought about. It was most likely going to be something in sales. However, I did go in the first 6 months, I was going for pre-med. So first 6 months of getting out from my mission, I wanted to be a dermatologist. I was actually set on being a dermatologist, and my parents said, it'd be great to have a doctor in the family, this and this and this. I'm like, I can do this. Let's go. And I, working full time and then going through the pre-med classes, I got to OChem, organic chemistry, and I had never had to study much at all for these tests. I'd never had to study for many tests in my life ever. Until organic chemistry, they gave us a sheet with, I think, 20-something equations on it. And then I looked at it, thought I'd have it down, thought I understood it well enough. And I remember sitting in class, and we had this test, and it was the first test I ever walked out of. I seriously was in that test. We weren't allowed to use our cheat sheet for the formulas. So we had to memorize all the formulas. I didn't have it. And I just remember looking at these questions and going, I don't know this. I remember thinking, it was the first time in my entire life taking a test that I could not finish it because I felt it was just BS. I couldn't even answer them if I didn't think I knew the right answer. So I think I did a quarter of the test, went through all the questions and had 3/4 of them not answered. And I said, I'm done. I just decided in that moment in that test of organic chemistry, I decided I can't work full time doing the hours I do there and study for tests like this because it's only going to get worse and be in pre-med, and I'm going to be here for 8 years. I think I could be in a better place in 8 years doing something in sales or something, real estate, something else than doing pre-med. And I decided right then I was dropping the class and I was out. So I skipped that part, but I did decide in the first semester, I believe, that I was done with pre-med. And so I just went to a business degree, a WP Carey, business communications degree, a generic business degree from WP Carey. And then I said I would figure out what type of business I wanted to get into. But I dropped that class right after that.
How did the experience at the University of Phoenix in the sales position translate into what you're doing today? Like, was that a worthy
Yeah, it was great.
Cause, or did it not have not much of an effect there?
No, it was really good. They had a manager. It was essentially a big call center. I mean, you're sitting in a call center on a 4th floor with 300 people in this call center, and you're all doing the same thing. And there's a manager over 8 to 10 of us, and he would be listening to our calls, talking about the way we talk to people, the way we explained things. And so in my life, I've always tried, I hate to say this, but I'm big on efficiency. Like, if there's a better way to do something, I sure as hell would love to do it that way. And so as long as I'm not breaking any rules, quote unquote, and it's ethical, I'm going to find a better way to do something. If it's available, I'm always on the lookout for a better way to do something. So when I was working at UOP, there were some great people around me. There was people who'd been there a long time, and I knew for me it was a transition. I knew I wasn't going to be there a long time. I'm not someone to go sit in this call center and be there for a long time, but it was a great way to see kind of the sales from a university aspect of the people that they talk to and the people around me, and getting into the business world in a small aspect of that. The way the management was set up and the way that they were listening to people, and they did reviews every 6 months. I mean, I got a bonus, two reviews in a row that were 20% each. So I went from making 30-something thousand to almost 60,000 in a year. I was happy, 21-year-old at the time, 22-year-old maybe, making almost 60 grand. I was ecstatic. But I also knew that these managers had been there 15 years and where they were capped at. And I thought, like, that's great. It's wonderful. It's good money. But this is a stepping stone to something else. So for me, it was to help pay for college, to help pay for the necessities of me and my wife at the time, and then decide what my actual career would be. But in doing that, it's a funny little story. I figured out pretty quickly in looking and watching different people getting calls and myself, I ended up discovering that so the University of Phoenix used to have a call center that would outbound call people who weren't interested. If they went online and said, yeah, I'm interested in hearing about a degree, they would put their name and number in there, and then their call center at University of Phoenix, it's called the QC, the qualifying center. They would call people outbound and get people on the phone and say, hey, we saw that you were interested in possibly a criminal justice degree. Can we talk to you more about that? Sure, I've got 3 minutes. That's fine. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to put a representative on the phone with you. So the QC would get live hot transfers from people on the phone, and they would send it to us in the call center. If you were lucky, so everybody was in a queue to wait to get a QC call. And those were like the golden ticket, right? If you got a QC call, your closing ratio was 70 to 90% versus if you were outbound, like we were calling just mostly cold calls, outbound ourselves, 8%, 5% close ratio on those leads. You're calling 100, 200 calls a day. You're lucky to get 1 or 2 that actually end up signing up for school. If that, some days nothing. These QC calls, they were like 75%, I would say, ready to sign up and ready to go. So the QC calls were hot. Well, I started noticing that if a QC call came in and started ringing, it would say QC on the caller ID. If the call got disconnected in the first 15 to 20 seconds, I noticed that you would get another one right away. So it seemed like it was the system tried to give you your QC call in line, but the person hung up in the transfer and the process, and therefore it puts you back at the top of the list. And so then you get another call pretty shortly after. Well, no one had told me anything about rules regarding this. So I quickly came up with a quick little process to get more QC calls. So
hang up on them on the first 20 seconds, call them back.
As soon as they transfer it over, I said, hey, I'm so sorry. Do you mind if I write your number down? I'll give you a call right back. I'm right in the middle of something. I'd write their number down, and I would hang up in the first 20, 30 seconds. I think it was 30 seconds if they hung up, maybe 25, whatever. And so I would hang up, and I would write their number down, and I would call them back. QC would put me back at the top of the list. All of a sudden, I was getting 7 or 8 QC calls a day. My manager calls me over. He goes, Craig, you mind telling me what the hell you're doing over there? How are you getting 7 or 8 QC calls in a day and the rest of the team's getting 1 or 2? What's going on over here? And I go, well, this is what's happening. And I told him, and he was like, he goes, okay, you go ahead and keep that between you. I'm going to pretend like I don't know that, but that sounds great because that helps our team. Keep it going. So he kind of played dumb to it because he figured out really quick. He's like, what are you doing? And this was probably the last 6 months I was there. It was probably the last year. And I started getting a bunch more. Now I had to taper it down because it was like way too obvious that I was getting more. No one ever yelled at me. No one ever got mad at me. I think it was just kind of a little trick to the system.
Yeah.
And so, again, it wasn't against the rules. My manager was like, whatever, but it was helping our team. It was helping him. So if there's a better way to do things or like a way that's not breaking the rules that can be more efficient and get more of what you need, I'll figure it out and I'll make it happen. In talking to my dad, when I got done at University of Phoenix, I was ready to make a move, and I was talking to my dad, and he mentioned the insurance thing, and go talk to Damon, your uncle. I talked to Damon, and Damon was like, we've got 6 or 7 partners here at the agency right now. If you bust your hump and you prove your worth, we'd love to make you a partner here one day. So I was like, okay. So that was my goal, was to go work at Webb and Greer Insurance and be a partner one day. So started out, and
what is one day? Give me a timeline.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't.
You could be a partner in that company one day
if I prove to be a valuable producer as somebody who is a high-level production producer, bringing a solid book of business, a big book of business to the agency, they're going to want me to be a partner. Because if I'm out producing everybody and I've got a book that's bigger than everybody else, and I'm a valuable asset to that company in terms of growth, revenue, profit, a good person, someone they like to work with, they're going to want me to be a partner, right? This is something I see in the business world all the time. People come in and they tell me, well, I want to be this, and I want to be this, and I want to make this much money, and I want to have this. Okay, where's the work to show me that you're worth that? Where's the work behind it first to show me that I want you to have that too, because you're worth every penny of that? I think people a lot of the times go in wanting things before they've proven anything. A lot of the times we want, right? All these return missionaries, no offense to the LDS Church, I love it. And I love the ambition that the return missionaries have. You haven't proven anything in the business world. Just because you've baptized 300 people on your mission, you haven't come into the business world and proven that you're a real asset to this business yet. But you come in demanding, some of them come in and they want to be a partner. They want to have equity in my company. They want to have equity in another company. They want agreements up front on what's going to happen. And I go, how would I even be able to give you that without knowing who you are in the business world, or what you've done, or what you're able to do, or what kind of value you're going to add to this business? For me, I knew that I would prove to be someone who they would want to have as a partner. I wasn't worried, or if not, somebody else would. So I guess I didn't stress too much about what that time frame looked like. I just knew that I wanted to produce. And that's kind of the way I've ran my book, ran my business, is I don't set a goal on, I need to hit this number. My goal is work your ass off every chance you have during business hours and be the highest producer you can, be the best producer you can, while taking care of those that you have. Because if you lose business you worked hard to get, that doesn't work either.
I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs have a story where they had an agreement with their first employer or a employer around some form of compensation plan. They work, they put their head down, they grind, at least according to them. And then something isn't fulfilled the way that they remember it. Mm-hmm. So if you have a philosophy around, it's really difficult to create a outline of a future via compensation if you haven't proven yourself. Mm-hmm. But you have somebody on the other end that's saying, man, I don't know if I want to be in the spot of a handshake or a what if. Like, speak to that if you were starting today and you believe that you could be a producer, but they weren't willing to put an agreement in place. It was, well, show us what you're worth and then we'll talk.
Yeah. So I understand that aspect for sure. So are you saying that now are you saying I'm going to, let's say I go to another competitor and I say I want to be a producer here and I'd like to have an agreement around being a partner as an opportunity with experience? Or are you saying I'm going back to being fresh, no insurance experience? How would I approach them, or how would that work not having experience or having experience?
Speak to someone that has aspirations of becoming some form of equity share or profit sharing partner, or having a piece of a company that wants a target to reach. Like, they want, if you put that out there, I know I can hit it. Mm-hmm. I just want to create an agreement around, if I do that, we have something in place. Like, talk to them about how you could create a structure like that, or do you even see that as being useful?
Yeah, I think it comes back to, what does that person want? So first and foremost, when I went to work at Webb & Greer, it was nice that they told me I could be a partner one day. It was not an agreement. It was, if you bust your hump and if you get there, we'll want to make you a partner and you'll be a partner like the rest of us here. So they were all at some percentage, equity partners in that agency, and that was something they decided to do. The first thing you got to do if you're going into work for someone is identify, what are my needs long term so that I can be happy long term, and ask the employer, what are your needs or what are your wants long term, and are you willing to give up this, or this? So you have to ask the right questions in the beginning to know, is this employer or is this company even able or willing to give up equity? Okay, if it's not equity, are you willing to give up profit sharing? Are you able or willing to do that? okay, if it's not profit sharing, are you able or willing to give up maybe a percentage of profit sharing or equity in my book of business? Okay, what does that look like? Those are the three types of things I see in the insurance world. Is if someone's willing to give up equity in the agency, it's either equity in the agency, profit sharing in the agency, or equity in their book. If those are things that you need in order to be happy long term, then ask the employer and ask the person you're interviewing with, or the employer, whoever, if those are things that they're willing to create structure around or create an agreement around before going into, what it is that you really need. Because, I'll be honest, I mean, in my little business, I don't need to bring in equity partners. I don't necessarily want to bring in equity partners. I know the value in learning. See, in my business, it is very complicated, more than anybody will ever understand in the commercial insurance world. The knowledge that it takes and the gathering of information over X number of years, there's so many sophisticated complications and so many different types of businesses with risk and insurance and the underwriting side of things and the rating side of things and the paperwork and the application side of things. There's so much variable there, so many variables. I know that the knowledge that I have and the way I do and the way I operate is the most valuable thing I could ever give to a new producer. Because if you go work at X agency, or X agency, you're thrown into a call center, you're told to call 200 numbers a day, you go out and meet with them, you might get another producer willing to go with you, but you're not even going to get the owner in a shop that's slightly bigger than mine. The owners will not go with them. The guys with the 20 years experience, and that knowledge varies on who they are, but some guys have been doing it for 30 years who don't have the knowledge that I was given, that I was able to get. And if you don't have somebody with you helping you work those deals as a new producer, good luck. Your close ratio is 10-15%. If you get someone like me or someone that has the knowledge to go in and talk to people about the right things and hit the right topics and be the MacGyver in situations where you need to be the MacGyver, you'll write 70 to 80% of everything you sit down with somebody and start working on. And that's what I've seen. I've seen Braden with me the last year. He's gotten into opportunities, $400,000 plus accounts that we've written, where as a new producer, you'd never be able to even close that deal unless someone like myself was with you to close it. So there's so much value in having the right person teach you this business. This is something that the state farms, farmers, all states of the world, those guys are never able to learn commercial insurance because there's nobody at those companies that know it. There's nobody that's taken the time to teach it or learn it, and their systems aren't able to handle bigger commercial accounts. So in a commercial shop, I see so many different agencies and so many different agents, but we know, us commercial guys, we know who the real commercial competitors are. The other ones, we say, give us your policies. We're going to be able to find 10 things wrong with it. We'll cut some money out of it. We got 3 carriers these guys don't even have, and we'll save you 20-30% and write this in a much better way because your agent just is not one of those commercial guys. Yeah. So in my business, it's very unique because knowledge and what you know and what you ask for. I mean, there's something so simple as an endorsement called agreed value. If you don't ask for agreed value, one of my clients that just had his building burned down would have got $900,000 less in the settlement of his building. The adjuster tried to call me and said, we got a problem here. And I said, what's the problem? Well, this building's worth this much and you've only insured it for this much. And I said, yeah, I know, I've talked to them about this. They did not want to increase their building limit. Unfortunately, now it's burned down. We can't fix it. But I said, did you see the clause on there that says agreed value? The adjuster goes, what? I said, there's agreed value down below. There's an asterisk with 3 asterisks on the policy. Did you see that? No, I didn't. I didn't even see the whole policy. Okay, so you're telling me there's agreed value on the policy? I said, yes, sir. That's why we don't need to talk about coinsurance. Don't even mention it to me. He goes, okay, we've got no issues here. That endorsement was free. Free to add. If you don't ask for it, you don't get it. If I did ask for it, which I did and got it, it means at the time of loss, he got $900,000 more than if I didn't ask for that endorsement.
Wow. I
mean, it's so simple, but so stupid. But so many agents don't know to ask for these things because they think they just don't know. They weren't trained. They weren't taught. The emphasis was not put on these little tiny endorsements to do the things that have catastrophic consequences at the time of loss. So I factor that in when someone comes to work with me because you got to understand, I have to go with these people to sell. I have to sit in that room. If I sit in that room and teach it we are selling this policy together, which we work on it together, and I have to give my time to that person to go sell with them and go teach them and train them and work through that account with them, they're getting me when they come work for me. I'm not going to hire 20 producers. I won't. I'll have a small handful and that's it. But they get me. And if they get me, we close 80% plus of those accounts. If they go without me, I've had producers who thought they were big boys and went out on their own. They were closing less than 20. Yeah. And so not to say that I'm something special. I just have had that knowledge, and I retain that knowledge, and I focus on those things to be able to, be able to close accounts and show people that we know what we're doing. So that has to play into it. It's like you can come in and work hard and bust your chops, but there's only one guy here who's going to teach you to be the best producer. It's coming from right here. So I have to value that when someone comes in and says, I want a part of your business. I'm like, well, the part of my business you're going to get that's going to be the most valuable is in my head.
It seems like how I hear the most reasonable or likely approach if you're looking for the highest compensation would be to create an agreement around negotiating a larger portion of your personal book that you build.
That's something that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah.
That is something that makes the most sense. And so that's the one I've been open to talking about to some degree. It's just, I have to think about my input in that and what that means in the long run. And if someone wants to come in and have a partial ownership of their book, they better talk about it up front. And I just need to feel comfortable with what that looks like.
Yeah. And listen, if that doesn't align for you as the new producer, then you can always go start your own agency, and good luck and best of luck for you.
But what I don't want to do is train someone with all my knowledge,
right?
Have them turn around and go start their own. I did that because what we did was at Webb and Greer.
Yeah, will you take us to that? Because you had a plan.
Yeah.
You had an agreement in place where you could see a future. Mm-hmm. What happened at Webb and Greer?
In 2014, at the end of 2014, so I'd been there 4.5 years or so, they announced that they were going to be purchased or acquired by USI Insurance.
Where were you at on your goals around creating a long-lasting piece in that branch at the 4.5 year mark? Were you close? Was it trending in the right direction?
Yeah, absolutely. I had outproduced all the producers of the year before. I had written more new business production than all of them, which was fine because they all had books. But I was ramping up my book just the way I wanted to. I had been ramping up that book of business. Every year was better than the next, and it was trending in the exact right direction. And I know it was only 4.5 years in, and they announced it, and I said, well, what does this mean for me? Well, you're going to love it.
They announced what?
That they were going to merge with USI. They were going to be acquired by USI. And Damon and I went to lunch. We talked about it. I talked with Ben, talked with a couple others. And I believe they knew that I would be impacted the most. I think that their intentions were good. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the majority owners were Craig Webb and Ben Greer, Webb and Greer. And Craig Webb wanted an exit. He was tired. He'd been in the business a long time, I think, and he wanted a cash out. And he thought this was the best play. He also felt, I think, that this would add value because USI is this big shop with all this additional structure and funding, and it was venture capital based. I think at that time they had been acquired by a venture capitalist firm and were looking to acquire more and more and more agencies. They'd grown by acquisition. Okay. They were growing, the fastest growing brokerage in the country by acquisition. So they were aggressively buying companies. They had bought Hub International, Wick Pilcher. They bought all of Wells Fargo shortly after. All the Wells Fargo insurance services offices they bought. And then we were one of the ones in Phoenix. So you
got gobbled up.
We got gobbled up. And I said, I don't think this is for me, guys. I never saw myself working for corporate America, right? I never saw myself working in a huge company with 4,000 employees at the time. I think they're now over 8,000 employees, but I didn't see that as something long-term for me.
I imagine your option for acquiring any sort of equity in USI wasn't a possibility.
Yeah, because the partners in Webb and Greer, they were going to get stock in USI. If you weren't a partner, then there's no stock on the table for you. So, and again, it wasn't necessarily about that. However, a lot of things were changing. Our compensation changed. We were getting 35% on new business we were getting 40% new business, 30% renewal, and they were changing it to 25% renewal. And that may not seem like a lot, 30% to 25%. That 5% represents 1/6 of your book. I mean, that's 1/6 of your income gone. So, was that 16% or whatever? Something around there. So for me, it was taking a hit there. They were taking away anything under a certain size. We were no longer allowed to write any small business. So anything under roughly $35,000 in premium, we weren't allowed to work on and we would not get paid on.
Where does that impact you as a producer, not being able to write a brand new business day one, opening the doors?
So in building my book of business, one of the main things I focused on was referral partners, right? Who's able to send me business rather than me just cold calling every single new client I have? Who's able to send me business without me picking up the phone and just keeping them happy and having them refer me business? Well, I have property managers. It took 3 years to get in with my dad's property managers. So they were like, this is daddy's boy. I'm not going to send business to him. I mean, I could feel it. It was thick. Like, okay, Craig, we'll give you a shot. Nothing. Worked it. Finally, one of the girls, actually at a different property management firm, ACM, we did a lunch and learn with them, and I walked in, and Ben Greer and I went in and did a lunch and learn, and it went great. And I was explaining co-insurance and ordinance or law and this building coverage and this and that, and one of the gals in there, Sandra, she was awesome. She's like, I have an account renews in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and it's gone up nonstop, and it does this, and I don't know if it has these things you're talking about. Will you look at this for me? I said, absolutely. It was with Brown & Brown. And I remember looking at it, and we took it, and within 2 weeks, I had a quote back that saved him like $35,000. It was better written, and she was ecstatic. She was so happy that she started talking about it with her other property managers, and next thing you know, I was getting business sent to me, these new buildings and lesser's risk policies with all shapes and sizes from ACM. And then all of a sudden, commercial property sent me one, and I did well on that, and then I got in with other property managers. So then it became, when you get in with property managers, it's very difficult. Even as my dad was the president of the company that they worked for, that was almost counterproductive because I was daddy's boy, and I'm not just going to send you business because you're daddy's boy. My dad will not step into that. He will not tell them what to do. He won't even guide them because he wants to keep hands off to let them work autonomously on what they feel is best. So it took almost 3 years, and finally I was getting with commercial properties. I was getting in with ACM. I was getting with other property management firms who were sending me business. And then USI comes in and says, all right, any accounts under $35,000 in premium is $5,000 in revenue, basically, you won't get paid on. Well, now all these referrals that are coming to me, $20,000 policies, $15,000 policies, $25,000, $30,000, if I wrote those, I'd get paid nothing. And that hurt. So all of a sudden I was passing up these referrals that were just given to me before, and they add up. Trust me, they add up. I watched my dad build a book of business at Commercial Properties. As the number one broker in the country, he was for many years with CoStar, based on number of transactions. So my dad was doing small deals by the hundreds, if not the thousands, over the year. And that eventually developed into him being the guy for these companies that were small. Some grew to be large, some grew to be medium, some grew over 20, 30 years. He had these clients, presidential pools and this and that, and all these companies who he put into small spaces at one point, but now he had been their guy for so long, he is their guy. And I love that aspect of it. Is like, I don't need to make $1 million right now. I'm good. I'm a new producer in the first few years here at a small company. I want connections. I want relationships. I want big or small. I want those connections that are going to develop over 20, 30 years and feed me for the rest of my life. That's what I wanted. And USI took that away. That was the most important thing to me. That's the way that I've seen my dad grow his book of business for 30 years. And they took that away. Basically, it was elephant hunting. Go out and get the big ones. Tell them why we're bigger. Tell them why we're better. Tell them why we have more resources and why we should BOR your policy, broker of record, AKA transfer the policy over to us. So they didn't even want us competing. They wanted us going in with an entourage of people saying, we're the best, this is why, let us take over your policy. That just didn't compute to me. So they want us to take over policies, not compete on them, and they want us to push aside all small business. And that was like against who I was and what I wanted to accomplish.
So you're out of alignment with your business plan. You've got a non-compete in place. How do you make the jump?
Oh, man. First, obviously, when they first announced that we were selling to USI, I was talking to my dad, and I said, what do I do? And he's like, I don't know. You need to decide if that's a company you want to work for. And I'm like, it's based on what I'm hearing and the things that we're not able to do there, and the referral partners I have that I won't even be able to work with anymore. I'm passing up $100,000 in new commission that I can't even write, that I've been building for 4.5, 5 years to be able to get. This doesn't work for me. So I either need to go find another shop to work for, or I need to start from scratch, which is going to be really difficult, or buy an agency. So I looked at all three. I went to a couple shops nearby. I told them what I had done, told them, my connections, where I came from. asked them if they would be open to allowing me to make an agreement to be a partner there and grow, because I wanted to be a part of something if we ended up selling again. I didn't want to be in that same position. Go through it once, I don't want to go through it again. And they kind of, some of them were like, well, we'll help you start your own branch and you can do this on your own. I'm like, I can do that on my own without you. Thanks. None of them gave me an answer that I wanted to hear. So I hired a business broker, paid a business broker $5,000 to go search for companies to buy. I don't know if you know, independent agencies are not widely available. They do not publicize them up for sale. They get gobbled up the moment they think about selling. You can find an Allstate, State Farm, farmers agency to buy all over the place, not independent agencies.
Why do you need to buy an independent agency in order to start your own?
You don't need to, but it gives you that cash flow in the beginning that starting from scratch, you're just digging out of a hole. So it allows you to have infrastructure, if nothing else, and some systems in place and infrastructure to where you're building all that from nothing. Just a little bit easier. If you can buy one for the right price, it makes the roll, it gets the ball rolling a little bit easier.
Okay.
And so
you would rather spend money up front and outlay that to have a foundation built rather than going into debt while you got to that point. That made more sense to you?
It was a possibility to me that it could make sense.
Okay.
It would depend on how much they were asking for their agency, right? So if you got one that was asking 1 times revenue, for example, 1 year's worth of revenue or 1.5 times worth of revenue, okay, we can make sense of this as long as there's systems in place. Like it just has to make sense. And making sense means the revenue and the multiple that they want and the infrastructure they have compared to how much I could grow it on my own from scratch or what I thought I could grow from scratch. And I ended up looking at 3 different small companies. I mean, 100,000, 150,000 in revenue a year, and they all wanted top dollar. And for me, and some of them had no systems. They were working in paper files. I mean, it was just not ideal. And so I ended up scrapping that idea, walking away from the business broker, and just said, we've got to do this on my own. I've got to do this on my own. And had an idea of what the finances would look like or what the cost would look like. Luckily, we ended up being better than what I thought. I think I ended up using a total of $144,000 as a loan from my dad to start the company. I estimated $250,000, and I ended up getting, in the first 4 months of starting my company, I ended up getting sued by USI, by my former employee.
For leaving.
Employer.
You got sued because you left while under an agreement.
So let me back up one step. When they announced the merger, in the first month of them announcing the merger to USI or the acquisition, I was talking to my dad and I talked to an attorney and I said, hey, I had to grab my non-compete and look at it. What does this look like? Rick, my attorney, what does this mean to me? What am I able and not able to do? And of course, attorneys, their job is to tell you what the law says and what they think you can do and what they think you cannot do. And my non-compete that I had with Webb & Greer was, we'll just say it was weaker, right? It was not super strong. It had some holes in it.
Non-competes are standard in your space?
Very standard,
okay.
Yeah. They're not really called non-competes now. They're called employment agreements, which include non-solicitation, non-acceptance, and non-interference with employees and non-interference with clients. So they're non-interference, non-solicitation, and non-acceptance of business. Essentially, don't contact your clients for at least for a set period of time. Don't contact or solicit employees because that's company property. And don't accept business if they call you and say, I want to be with you. You have to say no for a certain period of time. So it clarifies those parameters. Webb & Greer's agreement, employment agreement, non-compete, non-solicitation, was a little weak and had some holes in it. Attorney, of course, this is a much weaker agreement. If you're going to leave, this is the time to leave. You should take this. You should, go and do your own thing, and you should tell them up front what you're doing. I was like, okay. I was scared to death. I mean, he was pushing me to go talk to them and tell them, and I'm like,
as part of wrapping up the acquisition, I imagined that they were going through and having you renew an agreement with them.
That was the deal. So in order to stay on board and go with USI, you had to sign an entirely new employment agreement, non-compete, we'll call it. And that was much more strict, right? That was written by attorneys in New York or Delaware or somewhere, and it was much more detailed, much more enforceable in certain ways. So, the attorney at the time, Rick, was like, Craig, don't sign that agreement. That thing is nasty. That thing is much more strict. If you decide to leave later, it will be much more difficult to leave, and you will have a harder time, working with your clients again, basically. So we finally came up with this decision to go and drop a letter off at Craig Webb's desk. Let me tell you, I was scared to death. I hadn't even talked to Craig Webb much. I'd worked there for almost 5 years and had probably had 5 conversations with the guy in 5 years. I mean, he kind of did his thing. I dealt mostly with Ben Greer, who was the trainer of all the producers. I didn't talk to Craig much. He was kind of a scary guy. One time I sprayed fart spray in his office, and he just about strangled me to death. I mean, he wanted to kill me. So I had not talked to him very much. He was kind of a scary guy to me. Most people named Craig are pretty scary. And I went and dropped a letter off in his office that Rick and I wrote together that basically said, hey, this is my time. I don't want to work for USI. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to leave. I will not take my business, but if it's under the law and it's acceptable for me to accept my business under these conditions, then I will do so, and this is why. But I wasn't going to, straight up go call my book or go take any employees or do this or do that. I outlined what I was allowed to do per the law and what I was not allowed to do. And holy smokes, I just about created World War III. In fact, I was told that it would be World War III. So, and I want to emphasize, my uncle and I hope Craig Webb, I don't think he'll ever hear this, but if he did, I hope he'd understand, love the guy, love Ben, love Damon, love those guys. I have no problem with them. At the time, as a scared producer, going into a corporate America scene that I knew I didn't want to be in, my attorney made it really, emphasized really strongly that I needed to get out now. And I said, let's do it. If I need to get out now, I need to get out. Let's figure this out. And so we dropped a letter off on Craig Webb's desk. Next thing you know, my uncle's coming over to my office. I mean, we're calling my dad. Everyone's screaming at each other. It was ugly. I was on the phone for 5 hours that day with my uncle, Craig, Ben, my dad. I just remember it was ugly because I was basically flipping the bird to their sale, and I was a part of it. And they wanted young producers. They wanted a team of younger producers, and that was one of the incentives that they wanted to buy us for, was having this team, and myself included. And so I was messing up the deal. And so I ended up caving in after about a few days of just thinking through it. I mean, that day that I gave that letter, they somewhat halfway let me go. They said, they shut down my computer, they locked me out, and they said, you need to decide. You're either staying here and you're going through with this, or you're out and you're done. And I thought about it for the next day or two or whatever, and I just ended up deciding with my dad and with myself. I said, whatever. I said, I'll go through with it. I'll see what it's about. And if I don't like it, and I really don't, if it is what
you go through the merger and sticking on board. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I decided to just keep the peace. I decided to keep the peace. However, nothing was the same there after that. Like, nothing was the same. Like, I was not treated anywhere near the same. I was shunned from that day forward. Even though I reversed what I told them I was going to do, I was the redheaded stepchild. Ben hardly spoke to me. Craig never spoke to me. My uncle and I ended up resolving things eventually, but things were awkward. And I ended up staying for just over a year and saw what USI was about, was a part of it. I mean, they have some good people there, but it was exactly like I thought it would be. Yeah. And so I left in May of 2015, and I started Breinholt Insurance Group right after the birth of my my daughter, my last child, Lexi. She was born, I swear I was in the hospital. Oh, I ended up looking at Office Space the day she was born. That's what it was. And then I left. She was born in March, the end of March 16th, actually. Then I went and started in May of 2015. May 19th of 2015 was my last day at USI, and started Breinholt Insurance Group.
So you acquired a book or took a loan out to get off the ground?
I drew a loan from my dad to be able to start it, and had to pay myself a salary to survive. And I started with one employee who was going to be the receptionist, account manager, all the things. So it was me and one person.
And here we go.
And we had a small space in Chandler, on Chandler Boulevard, close to Dobson. And it was like a 1,300 square foot space, had 3 offices in it and a little reception area. It was great.
And you had to start from scratch. You had to go and get all new book of business, and that was scary. Go time again.
I couldn't call the clients I had before. What ended up happening was, over those first 5 or 6 months, I ended up having one other producer that came on board, Dusty's brother, Tyrell. Love Tyrell. Still friends with Tyrell. And had a personal lines person that ended up coming on board to do personal lines, and then I had that receptionist / account manager person. So there ended up being 4 of us in the first 6 months. And I ended up just reaching out. I just started cold calling. I started reaching back out to people that said no to me before, started calling clients that I never wrote, started calling people my dad knew. My dad was helping push people my way that I had not worked with before, along with other friends and family that were very helpful. And I just started cold calling everybody and anybody, and we were able to get some business written. We were able to start growing, and it about 6 months in, Tyrell had been with me for a month or two, and Tyrell was talking to his brother Dusty, and I had written the Green Mango Pest Control Insurance before, Cameron, Dusty, and I knew that was off limits. However, when Tyrell came and worked for me, and this is just dumb thinking, I guess, at the time, but Tyrell goes, I should be able to take over the workers' comp for them. You wrote it before. This isn't you. This is me. I'm his brother. I should be able to write his account. And so his workers' comp was coming up, I think, in October. So I called USI. I called Damon over there at USI, and I said, hey, just an FYI, Green Mango, I know that's my buddies, and I used to be my account. Tyrell is his brother. He's a producer with me. He's going to take that over, the workers' comp, which is a smaller piece of it. He's going to BOR it. I just want to make it known so that you guys understand this is his brother, not me. And I remember Damon saying, well, it's not my call. You should probably talk to Ben, but I understand that's not my decision. I'm not involved in that, kind of a thing. And I don't remember if I talked to the attorney or not before. We BOR'd it. And so,
what does BOR mean?
A broker of record. Essentially, you sign over
we're transferring our account
your
over to Breinholt Insurance Group.
From USI to Breinholt Insurance Group. And the second we did that, it triggered a cease and desist from USI. They sent me a cease and desist. Basically, stay away from my business, undo what you've done. And before I even had time to act on it, I got served with a injunction and subpoena for my non-compete and everything else. So I was in a full lawsuit within a week of that letter.
Yeah.
And so then I'm sitting in a lawsuit against a non-compete situation. Luckily, I had only a few accounts that had left USI that then I had taken over after because they were no longer with USI. And so I felt pretty good that I'd kept my nose clean and I hadn't taken anything directly from USI. And then Tyrell being his brother, I actually called them to tell them. So I felt like, I didn't violate the non-compete per se. And if I did violate it, those parts are not enforceable, so to speak. So I felt like I had a pretty good scenario. And so I just said, look, that's fine. Let's go to depositions, do what you want to do. Let's go and let's hear everyone's voice. Let's hear who they really wanted for their agency. You want to sue me over this? Let's go. Yeah. And I had my dad's backing, which he was scared to death of how much money we're going to spend on attorney's fees. But started getting $8,000 attorney's fees, $4,000, $3,000 every month. I'd get a invoice, and it would just make me sick. And luckily, within 6 months of that going on, 6 or 7 months, we were supposed to do depositions and get these few clients in a room and talk to them. They canceled it, which was weird. And then I had to provide all my emails, all communication, everything, which is fine.
Yeah.
Took a crap ton of work to find everything and send it, but by the time they had dropped the depositions, and I'm like, what are we doing? Rick, what's happening? Like, what do we need to do to get this moving along? He goes, we need to be the pursuers. We need to be the ones pushing for depositions then. So we pushed for it. And the moment we started pushing to get everyone together again for depositions, right before the day of depositions, they called and said, how would you feel if we just drop this and walk away and don't do anything? And I said, that sounds great. And Rick's like, we need to ask him for attorney's fees and get the attorney's fees back. I'm like, no, Rick, just drop it. Let's walk away.
Be done.
I want no part of this. Just let me run my business. So we spent $40-something thousand on attorney's fees, but learned a lot through that as well.
So schooling was naturally easy for you. Mm-hmm. You went and pursued higher education with other thoughts in mind. Mm-hmm. You switched, but you were far enough along to finish. But to my knowledge, it doesn't look like you've used much of that other than the experience of what it takes to complete it.
Yeah, there's little pieces of like a business marketing and things that come into my head about be better or different, right? And this and that. Like certain parts of certain classes, supply chain was a great class actually.
Oh, great.
That I remember that I thought were great tidbits of information that I've leaned on here or there, but nothing significant.
You learned sales, whether you had a natural knack at that, but you spent at least a year in a sales environment.
Almost 2.
Yeah, almost 2 years. You found the path that you wanted to go down, which was commercial insurance. You went and worked for a shop that had an opportunity that aligned for you. The plans changed. You leave and realize the only way to get to now where you want to go is to start your own business. You face litigation.
I made an agreement, I forgot too, with my wife, Kristen at the time, and I said, hey, you know that I can work. I said, and you know that I'm not scared of working long hours and whatnot, but I said, if I start my own company, you have to agree. And I made a firm agreement with her. I said, you will not have a husband Monday through Friday, period. I won't even be present Monday through Friday for at least 3 to 4 years. I said, if you can do that, I will start this company. I swear to you, I said those exact words, and I made her agree and understand that she would not have a husband Monday through Friday. I would be there on the weekends.
3 little ones at home.
Eventually, yeah. In 2015, we had 3. Yeah, no, sorry. We did have 3, when I think.
Yeah.
Yes, we had 3 little ones at home. I said, you will not have a husband Monday through Friday. And she was good. She agreed to it. And I said, okay. And she didn't. For 3.5 years. Even more, probably. He was probably full 4 years. 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Went home, said goodnight to the kids some nights. Then I jumped on the computer from 9 to 1 a.m. And I swear to you, it sounds stupid, but I did it. I didn't even think about it. I mean, my friends were having fun, this and that. I don't know if you remember, James, if you guys would go on things or go on trips or do this or that. And I'm like, I can't. I didn't do things with my buddies for a while there as I was building that company because it was like, this is my one chance to have something to grow.
As I'm having more of these conversations, I'm finding a theme around this 3 to 4 year period.
Yeah.
That if you can just put your head down and commit to something, and I'll use a definition from a mentor of mine around commitment, do whatever's necessary to help it succeed, that you can really create something great. And it sounds like that time period was similar for you.
Yeah. And I knew that because I'd been at Webb & Greer long enough to see where your book starts to escalate and where it starts to exponentially grow. You need at least 3 years, if not 4, to where that thing starts to compound. And then the snowball starts rolling a little bit more on its own. But until then, you have to put in the time. You have to make the calls. It's exposure. If you don't have the exposure out in the market and people don't know who you are, how do they know to call you? Right? If you haven't worked on enough accounts or talked to enough people or been in enough conversations with people, you're not relevant. You're not going to be relevant. So for some reason, that 3 to 4 year mark, from everything I've seen, is that time frame that you need. And it needs to be, I tell any new producers I've worked with, I just have a new one that graduated from Colorado, like I was telling you, and it's a female. And I said, listen, I tell all of them, I said, if you sacrifice 3 to 4 years of your life and just focus, you're not going to have as many parties with your friends. You're not going to be hanging out with your friends as much. You're not going to be able to go at 5 o'clock and go to happy hour. Forget about that for 3 to 4 years. If you can truly do that for 3 or 4 years and just put your head down and grind and do not stop calling, do not stop talking, do not stop thinking about it, call everybody you see, talk to everybody you see, and don't stop for 3 to 4 years, it will turn into something. The more you input in those 3 to 4 years, the more your output will be for all the time after. And that is, I firmly believe that. I've seen it. I've seen it in my own book. I've seen it in my own life. And I've seen it in new producers who have started. Braden, who's with me, doing awesome. He's relentless. He will call 100-something people a day. He's written a crap ton of new business that I wouldn't even think he was going to write because he just talks to people. He calls people. Yeah.
How do you get paid in commercial insurance?
As a new producer?
Yeah, how do you get compensated? Like, what's the structure of, I take over a new account and I write a policy that is this X amount in premium. You know, like you recently just wrote a property of ours, right? We had to write a $134,000 check to you guys to get it properly insured. How does that work for compensation typically in this space?
Yeah, we get paid a percentage of the total premiums that you pay the insurance company. So let's just say you pay $100,000 to make it simple. $100,000 premium, commissions will range anywhere from 10 to 15%. In the non-standard world, they're closer to 10 to 12%. In the standard world, they're typically closer to 15. But it's anywhere, we'll just say average is 12 to 15% commission. Workers' comp is less. Auto, general liability, property is usually 15. And we get paid that percentage to the agency. The agency gets paid that percentage of the premium. So if we're paying a standard direct carrier, you pay $100,000 to the carrier. Most carriers when you make that first payment on your policy with a standard carrier, they send us a check or a direct deposit for $15,000, let's say, on a $100,000 account. We get paid 15%.
What's a realistic goal you could give to somebody starting out in the space on new accounts they should get in a month, like to survive, and what their goal could be? What's a young Craig Breinholt writing per month, just getting started out, grinding away, being a top producer? And what is a good goal for somebody to get started? I need to bring on X amount new accounts each week or each month starting out.
I don't look at the number of accounts so much. We look at revenue. We look at, like, when I first started out in the business, Ben would always say, you should hit $5,000 in revenue a month when you're rolling. When you're up and rolling after the first few months, you're just trying to get your feet wet, making calls, figuring out what to say, how to say it. After 6 months, you should hopefully be writing $5,000. And now that was in 2010. So it's like, we're 14 and a half years later. $5,000 a month. If you're doing that, that's the baseline. Sure. Really, you should be pushing more like $8,000 to $10,000 a month in new revenue. Because remember, the producer, if you bring in $10,000 in revenue, the producer, most agencies will pay like 40% to the producer new business, 30% on renewal. So that producer will make $4,000 of that $10,000 that comes in the first year, and $3,000 every year after that. And then that just adds. So that $3,000 stacks on top of each other as you write more and more and more business. Our agency pays $45 new business the first year, $35. So you write a $10,000 revenue account, $10,000 in premium, which is probably an $80,000 account. $10,000, the producer would bring in 45% of that. So $10,000, $4,500. Every year after that, $3,500. A lot of my competitors pay $30 on renewal. USI pays $25 because they're bigger and they feel like they have more value. So you want to be building. I think a lot of producers, when I'm starting out, I tell them, you want to get your book to $1 million in premium, which is around $150,000 in revenue, so that you can make about $50,000 or just above $50,000, and everything you're writing, then you'd be a validated producer. I try to look at new producers, and I know it's not much money, but we try to pay them a salary until they're validated. So a new producer, they're not going to make any money if you're on commission only. I've had one that's done it, and I paid him a higher percentage on commission to incentivize him to be able to survive. He struggled for a little bit, but it's Braden. He's done very well, but he's getting paid 90% of the first year commission, which I won't ever do that again because it actually strangles us and we have to hire more people and we don't have enough to hire them. But I made that agreement. I've stuck with it with him. In the future, it'd be more like 75, and then it tears down to 50, and then it tears down to the 35 that it should be.
Yeah.
But everybody else I've ever hired, we've done salaries where we pay them a $50,000 salary, just say average of $50,000 to survive. And they need to validate. Typically, they validate within 2 to 2.5 years, to where once their renewals equal their salary, so their 35% equals a $50,000 salary, which is right around that $1 million mark in premium. Then we drop their salary and they just make commission, and they make more and more and more and more because they're still writing new business at 45% on top of the renewals at 35 that already equal their salary.
Yeah.
So we pay a salary to survive until they validate.
Okay.
And then once you're a validated producer, you're making your strict commissions on your book.
Craig, leave us with this.
Mm-hmm.
The goal of this platform is to help people see that they can enter into a million different, in our viewpoint, a million different spaces to generate income. Yes. And we've used that $1 million mark. Over the years, we've given you a hard time with the famous Tom Brady quote after he won his first Super Bowl. I believe it was after he won his first Super Bowl. He kind of puts his hands on his head. He's like, I'm just glad I don't have to write insurance. Right? And
I don't have to do insurance anymore.
Yeah, like which is meaning that was his backup plan.
Yeah, his dad,
right? If he wasn't
had an insurance agency.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Can you tell us where you found alignment and why you love this space and why, it's your future and what you're building around?
Yeah.
Let me phrase that again, Craig. Tell us why insurance is a passion of yours and where you found alignment and why you love it.
Yeah. I think those people that know me know that I am a little bit too passionate and can be passionate about just about anything in life. If I learn to love something, I learn to love it and I have a passion for it. It doesn't matter if it's that wood table right there. I will probably end up selling that wood table to 4 or 5 people I know if I love it that much because I find a way to be passionate. Insurance has been this thing that I've learned to love. I learned to love the product. I learned to love the people I deal with, business owners. I learned to love the technical side of it. So I am a strategist. I am somebody who loves strategy. I am somebody who I grew up playing Command and Conquer on a computer game. I wasn't a full-blown nerd, but you could say I was definitely a nerd to some aspect because I love the intricacy of things. I love the details of things. I love technical things. And this business is just complicated enough and extremely complicated on the back end and the different variables and scenarios that it keeps me intrigued. It keeps me interested. It keeps me engaged. I love problem solving, strategizing, and coming up with different solutions than these other agents that have been in the business for 30 years who don't like to think outside the box, right? Like hanging up on the QC calls and getting more calls. If there's a better way to do it and better way to help the client and better way that we all win, let's do that, right? Insurance is very old school a lot of the times. I like looking at the new products and technology and things that have come out and utilizing those things. But above all, we need to know our product. We need to know what we're selling. We need to understand it so that we can explain it in a dumbed down version to our clients. And then we need to be responsible. And if you set up the agency, which I'm so grateful that we have some of the best people I've ever worked with right now. I have nobody in my office that I could say that I don't like. And I love working with all of them, and they're all great people, and they do what we're trying to accomplish is make sure that the client never feels alone, never feels like they're not getting the call back, the email back, the response back. And if you can set that up, I just love being able to be in a space where my clients appreciate us. They get more responsiveness on certificates of insurance. They get paid quicker because we get their COIs done right and efficiently. And don't get me wrong, I love being in a business where we can continue to grow and write more business and everybody together makes more money. Yeah. I want my employees to literally at some point, and hopefully they do now, but if not, I want to pay them to the point where they say, wow, I feel like I'm overpaid, right? Like that's something I would love to hear. Yeah. Is my employees feel like they're overpaid for what they do, meaning that they like it, they feel like they make a good wage for what they do. And you'll hear it. I mean, I give bonuses and I give payroll increases by paying attention and seeing who's involved and who gets it. And I won't wait till I don't do a review process. I don't do this. I don't do that. It's literally, I went up last week to one of my girls and said, I'm bumping your salary up $5,000. Oh my gosh, what? You're getting it. You're doing better. You're committed. I can tell. Here you go. And I did it to one other person. You just, in the moment, you recognize who's engaged and you reward them and they love it. And some of them cry and it's awesome.
Well, I have a business partner and he gave you a pretty great compliment recently.
Oh, that's nice.
I just told him, hey, listen, I want all of our insurance to be here. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if you remember this. I wasn't very involved in the interaction of moving our policies or having you quote them because I trust him. And, I just told him what my preference would be. After dealing with you and your team, he said, I don't recall an experience of professionalism inside of our industry being greater than what I just experienced with Breinholt Insurance Group and Craig specifically, and it was great. So tell people where they could find you if they're looking to have that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty easy to find, but BreinholtInsurance.com. I just use my cell phone for everything that anybody needs. If I need to be if I'm not on top of a mountain with no service, you can reach me on my cell phone. I call back, I respond. So it's not too difficult to get a hold of us, but we've got a great team that I delegate those lesser items to. And if it's technical and crazy and there's a claim and there's someone injured or this, I talk through it and I work through it with my clients in the moment. But but my cell phone is my best resource, and it's something I'll never stop answering. So email and phone calls, we got to do them, and we definitely have a team to help make sure that everything gets responded to. So I love what I do, love my clients, love the people I work with, love you guys. Your partners are awesome. I mean, that's what's cool is we get to see so many different industries: tortilla chip manufacturing, plastic film manufacturing, real estate. It's interesting, it's fascinating, and I get to see other people, crushing it while we get to be a part of that. So,
well, thank you for giving your time to us today. I hope people can get to know you more and listen to it. Love you, man. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.